Well, greetings, Cap fans, and welcome to episode 189 of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. I'm Rick Verbonis. I'm your host, and joining me today is the best gosh darn co-host out there. That's Mr. Bob Lucius. Oh, Bob. Now remember, I do my best work when I'm being worshipped as a god.
Have we started yet?
Yeah, we start.
Oh, all
Yeah.
right. I didn't know if that was. I didn't know if I just caught you on a hot mic or something. I have
Oh,
because I have no idea where that's from.
come on, Bob. It's me, Johnny.
Johnny County Cash.
Johnny Bravo.
Oh, Johnny Bravo. Who's Johnny Bravo?
Johnny Bravo, who's a longtime cartoon from the Cartoon Network.
Oh, really?
You've seen pictures
I
of him.
I have never seen an episode of Johnny Bravo.
Guess what? Neither have I.
Is he a spy?
But
Is he a spy?
no, I don't think so. He's just a guy who feels like he's like a do-gooder, and he's his voice I think is a cross between Elvis and James Dean,
James
right?
Dean. Oh, all right,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
right. Yeah,
And
yeah.
anyway, so he's this. If you've seen a picture of me, like, oh, I've seen that guy before. He's got
Probably.
like
Yeah.
a V chest, right? And
Uh-huh.
he wears a black t-shirt, and he has got black sunglasses with really like blonde, bouffant, puffed up hair,
Oh,
slicked
okay.
back,
Yeah.
and he's kind of got a smile that goes up to the side. And
Yeah. All
yeah,
right.
yeah,
All
he
right.
was pretty big on Cartoon Network back then.
All right. Back in the day.
Back in the day, back in
Back.
the late 90s.
Yeah. Oh, that is back in the day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. He has he sounds like he has a certain well, maybe not. Maybe I'm just,
Well, you know what? That was just my version of him. Who knows how
yeah.
close it is? But you know what, Bob, to you,
Yeah.
I was dead on.
Absolutely. Pitch
Yeah,
perfect. Pitch perfect, my
absolutely.
friend. Yeah.
Bob, why am I greeting you with Johnny Bravo?
Because I know this one. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Yeah?
Oh, is it because there's a character by the name of Codename Bravo in the story
Yeah.
we're about to cover?
We are. We are
All right.
covering a story, as you put it, because it's going to be I'm sorry, five
Ooh, yeah.
issues
I was like, oh my
of
gosh, I didn't finish it. A little moment of
I
panic
kind of
there.
thought it was weird. I ended on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're covering the first five issues of Captain America Volume 6, which is by Ed Brubaker and Steve McNiven. And we're doing what we call recap today. A recap is when we don't do it panel by panel like we do a lot of our stories. Instead, we take a larger story and we just kind of do a synopsis of what happens in the issue, and we pick out some things that we like about it or maybe find interesting, and then we talk about them. And so we like to call that recap.
Yeah. Some would say we break it down. Waka, waka, waka.
I don't know
Nobody
who would
says
say
that.
that. Yeah,
Nobody
yeah.
says that.
Nobody
Yeah.
says that.
Sorry.
That's all right. But yeah, looking forward to that. So, Bob, what's before we get into it though, what is going on in your world?
That's crazy, Rick. It's crazy. Cats, dogs living together, it's just crazy. My son is keeping me on the go constantly between the math tutor and the football. It's football practice. Can you believe that? He's not even in ninth grade yet. They've already started football practice, and eighth grade is not even let out yet.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And this is something I like. I don't know about what it's like in New Jersey. I grew up in Massachusetts, of course, ages ago. We didn't have a freshman team. We had a JV team. We had a varsity
Hmm.
team, right? But
Yeah,
they have freshman teams here.
that's
So
crazy.
yeah, so all the eighth graders now are in training to for the freshman team. So yeah, that's my life right now. It's running the taxi. I know you've been there yourself, so I'm not telling you anything new. But this is a new stage of life for me. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The taxi driver, taking your kids around everywhere. That's a lot of fun. I am doing pretty darn good because for the last year, my youngest has her driver's license, so I have no longer have to do that. I just have to worry about how my car is going to be and her
right.
safety.
Monitoring
Uh,
the GPS,
yes.
yeah, all that sort of stuff. Right. Yeah.
She doesn't know. Yeah, Bob. So, here it is. When this episode comes out, it's May 22nd, and my daughter will be graduating high school in 4 weeks. That's
Wow.
crazy.
That is crazy because that's your second, right? First one's already
Hmm.
out and on a professional career,
Yeah,
touring these great United States, and your second one is in the chute, ready to go. And how do you feel about that?
it's weird. It's weird. I'm not
Yeah,
old enough to have kids like that.
right.
I know by looking at me, you go, yeah, Rick, you do. But I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
And I mean, I surround myself with comic books and comic book art.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I've been mentally keeping myself young for a while, so maybe that's why my kids tolerate me. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know it's going to be a big life transition. So, sure there's some late nights and, who knows what's on the horizon, but you've done a great job with your kids and they're going to go off and do great things. And so you have a lot to be proud of. And now is your time
Thank
to
you.
maybe take a little self time, a little self care time.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. I think I've earned it. I think
Yeah.
I started out with hair and and, and now not so much.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
small sacrifices along the way.
indeed.
Yeah.
Anything going on? Nothing really going on in the Facebook group.
Well, there's one big piece of news, Rick.
What's that?
Our March Madness fantasy football thing, which you crushed.
Okay, you are totally combining things.
And
I
the
think you're
draft.
I
It was
think you're
drafted.
combining the March Madness Cap Madness
Oh,
bracket
right.
that we did,
Yeah, right.
and then the Captain America fantasy draft.
Right.
But if you
Yeah.
really think about it, I actually crushed both because in the bracket, my
Yes.
favorite all-time Captain America artist won,
You did. He did.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
He pulled
uh
away at the
yeah,
end. I mean, I thought it'd be closer than that. I really did think it
you
would
thought
be
John
closer.
Byrne was gonna
No,
give him
I
a
didn't
run
think
for his
he.
money?
I thought he would. I thought he would. I thought, although Burns' output wasn't nearly as voluminous
Hmm.
as Mike Zeck's. I just thought, for the sake of argument, some folks would try to make this a bit more of a horse race, but it really wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was cool. But I think what you're referring to is the Captain America fantasy draft. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. That's
Uh
the thing.
yeah, yeah. And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Ultimately, I think all four of us had a lot of fun doing
yeah.
that. That was a few episodes ago, right? I mean, that was
Mhm.
episode 185, so that was like a month ago. And we had two of our patrons on the show, Grant Ball and Mark Domeyer. And then we went through 8 rounds picking players or
Mhm.
characters and then coming up with a story to pitch at the end.
Right,
We
right.
wrote we wrote a little preview blurb and
Yeah, a
we
little
put it up as a
synopsis.
yeah, and we put it up as a
Yeah,
poll.
yeah,
And yeah, I won.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You crushed it. You crushed it. Don't be modest.
I, yeah, I mean, it was like I got half the votes,
Uh-huh.
and then the rest of you guys, got the other
We
half.
we bickered among the rest. Yeah.
So here's something funny, and
All right.
and so um, you voted for Grant,
I did. I
right?
love the old man. Yeah, the dad story.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
great
voted
idea.
for Grant. You and
Yeah,
I voted for Grant.
yeah,
Grant voted for you.
yeah.
Mark voted for himself.
I didn't notice that.
We love you, Mark.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
If you can't love yourself, who's gonna love you?
Yeah,
All right.
exactly. So yeah,
Nothing wrong with
but
a little self-love, Mark.
that you know what? I may just have to cut that blurb out and just use that.
It's a PSA.
Yeah,
Everybody needs a
future.
little self-love every now and again.
Yeah.
So
But no, it was a lot of fun. And
yeah,
thank you to everybody who voted for my story, my draft, my characters. Everybody had put a lot of fun and thought into it. So
yeah.
looking forward to the next one in August.
The most difficult, most challenging part of that whole thing was working within a 300 character limit for the synopsis.
I knew that was going to be tough for you. I knew it was going to be tough for you. I admit, uh, it was 1,000 character actually.
Was it?
It was 1,000 characters,
Oh my
including
God.
spaces.
Okay, I thought it
You
was
used every bit.
300.
You used every bit of it.
I did use 300. Yes, I whittled that down like a surgeon.
What was it? 300 words you did?
No, 300 characters with spaces.
Was it? I don't know. We all
Yeah,
did the same. We all had the same
yeah,
parameters.
yeah.
I may have had a little bit of an advantage having been in marketing and knowing how to write copy
Uh-huh.
and be succinct. And you
Possibly,
know,
possibly, possibly,
but
possibly.
yeah,
Oh, I got it down to 300, buddy. It was no problem getting it down to 300, but I would have loved to expound it for a good 1,000.
I know you would have.
I like
You
the
just,
richness.
if you go back to that episode, Bob just
Uh-huh.
went on and on about his story.
I guarantee, like, there was probably a lot of befuddlement, at least from my story, right? Because it probably wasn't clear to a lot of folks that it was a Burnside story,
No, it
unless they
wasn't
listened.
clear. And I think it should have been in what you wrote because I think you would have gotten either more or less
Or
votes
less, right?
because it was
Yeah,
Burnside. You probably would have had some people going like, well, I'm not doing a Burnside story. And then
with
you've gotten some
Burnside,
people going, hey, we never hear a Burnside story. Let's do a
right?
Burnside
Yeah,
as.
I know
But
300
you
though. It's
made
hard to.
that you left that out almost on purpose, I'm thinking.
Well, no, I just felt like I had to explain the relationships among the 8 characters we picked. Right? I don't
But
think
that's like
any.
a major part of the story that it was Burnside.
I mean,
You
it is a major
completely left it out.
a major part of the story, right? Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree with you. So, so I think a lot of folks might have thought it was an Isaiah Bradley story, and it was, of course, but he was just a supporting character,
Mm-hmm.
not the Burnside. So, so live and learn, right? It's a learning process, Rick. This
It's all right, man.
fantasy madness,
We got another one in August.
fantasy madness
You
thing.
got to start thinking about your characters and your story now.
All right, all right. It's going to be a Jeff Mace.
uh,
I
and
like
you're gonna get 12 votes again.
I don't care. I don't care. I just need one. I just need Tom Brevoort or Alana to
That's true.
to like it, right? I
Yeah.
can't believe even Mike Perkins voted for you, Mike. I called him out
Thank you, Mike.
as my artist of choice for crying out
He
loud.
probably didn't listen to the episode.
He probably didn't.
He probably just saw, oh, it's got Diamondback.
Right. Yes. I wonder if she's going to be wearing that stealth suit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Anyway, that was a lot of fun.
Yes.
All right. Shall we get to today's recap?
Yeah. Let's just dive in.
So I'm going to go ahead and start. So I'm just going to paint a picture here of what's been going on during this time period, right? So
All right.
this is 2011, and Ed Brubaker had just done this magnificent run, Volume 5 on Captain America, that had gone, and I'm just guessing here, right? Something like 6 years, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And during those 6 years, um, he very early on had he introduced Winter Soldier, brought back Bucky. He killed Jack Monroe. He had made Steve a lot more involved with S.h.i.e.L.D. And so Fury and Sharon Carter were major characters, and he had a love, a relationship with Sharon Carter, and then brought Red Skull, killed Red Skull, but Red Skull wasn't gone. Brought back some other cool villains, and then he does the unthinkable. Right? You think he already did the unthinkable, right? Because he brought back Bucky,
Right. Yeah.
but he did the unthinkable. He kills Steve Rogers,
Mm-hmm.
and Steve Rogers goes missing from his own series for 3 years. Like that is unheard of,
That's incredible. That was
right?
a bold and risky move.
Right. And I want to point out during this time, there were a couple of major crossovers that were going on in the Marvel universe. In the early, like the first year, there was House of M. And House of M was a crossover that dealt with the mutants. And it was essentially after the um what did they call that when the Avengers disassembled story that Brian Michael Bendis did? And so he disassembled the Avengers, made Scarlet Witch go crazy. She ends up killing some of the characters. Then she basically gets manipulated by her father, Magneto, and does a no more mutants. And what happens is the mutant population is decimated. What does that mean? Well, it means is reduced by like 90%. And so a lot of mutants died or lost their powers. And also then decided to create this world and so on. So, that was going on in Marvel at the time. Then shortly thereafter, the next big crossover, even bigger than the last, Civil War. And this was Captain America was front and center. He was, doing really well in his own book in Captain America. And then he is now front and center versus Iron Man in the Heroes or Powers Registration Act, defying the government, becoming an outlaw. And it was a fantastic story. And it was uh, drawn by Steve McNiven. And it was amazing artwork, absolutely amazing artwork. So these things are going on. And then again, Captain America dies. And then we have, he asked, he left a note if he, upon his death, that Bucky would take up the mantle. And he did. And so then, as you love a redemption arc, Bob, then we see a couple of years of a redemption arc, because as Winter Soldier, Bucky did a lot of horrible things and a lot of atrocities, a lot of murders, assassinations, and all under mind control. So that gives him a little bit of a pass, I think, from a reader's perspective, but not in his own mind. And so he had to deal with those demons, and it was a really good story. And then we see Sharon Carter, and she's possibly pregnant with Steve's baby. The Red Skull is getting involved. Sam Wilson's very much involved. Great story. And then it evolves, and then essentially at some point they do Captain America Reborn, which was a miniseries that brings back Steve Rogers 3 years later, and Ed Brubaker writes that. Brian Hitch, who we had on recently as a guest, was the artist for that. So then all of a sudden you've got Captain America and two Captain Americas, right? And you have Bucky, and then Fear itself happens, and then Fear itself, and then Bucky kind of becomes like a bad guy, and then he goes off, and then leaving Captain Steve Rogers to be the Captain America, himself. So that brings us to today, and it's 2011. And what else is happening right now, Bob?
I just retired from the Marine Corps.
Did you now?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, well, congratulations. I
Oh,
did.
thank
I'm sorry I'm a little late.
you.
But Captain America First Avenger, the movie,
Yes.
debuts. And so that comes out end of July
Mhm.
of 2011. So perfect timing to launch a new Captain America series. As somebody who owned a comic book store back then, I can tell you, thank you, Marvel, for introducing a new volume that's easy for people to jump onto who watch the movie, now are interested in a character they weren't interested in before. Do you have any comics? You sure do. Here's the new series. Boom. The first two issues are out. Go ahead and start reading that. Um, here are the collections of volume 5 that is by the same writer. You like this? Same writer wrote this stuff. Here's 7 volumes of, collections, um, so that's what we're dealing with right now is the new movie came out, new volume came out. Ed Brubaker comes back. He's going to probably be taking a different approach to this story as opposed to what he had before. I think volume 5 was a lot of espionage and super agent, whereas now let's bring back the superhero. and uh, and so they bring on who else better than the artist of Civil War, who drew an amazing Captain America with Steve McNiven.
Nicely wrapped up, Rick. I think he covered all the main points there, particularly the tie-ins. That was really useful to set the stage, I think, for this recap.
Shall I go ahead and do the solicitation for
Oh
this issue,
yes,
Bob?
of course.
All right. Best-selling cap writer Ed Brubaker and superstar artist Steve McNiven bring you the next huge chapter in Steve Rogers' life, and it's a perfect jumping-on point for fans of the Cap movie. A funeral for a fallen friend turns into a race against time as the original Captain America makes his explosive return.
I like that. That sounds good.
Yeah,
I think I
I think
might
so.
put that on my pull list.
So this had a cover date of September 2011, but a release date of July 13th. And the creators, as I mentioned, Ed Brubaker and Steve McNiven. The inker is Mark Morales, colorist Justin Panzer, letterer Joe Caramanga. Where have I heard that name before? And editor Tom Brevoort. And Bob, do you want to take the listeners through the cover?
Sure, I'd love to, Rick. So it's a McNiven Ponsor cover, and it's one of, I think, gosh, I think there were 11 or 12 variants of this cover. I should know that because I have them all for some reason. I was at that stage of my life. I even have the Singapore Comic Con
Oh,
variant
cool.
of this. Yeah,
That's really hard to get.
it is hard to get. If you're into that. It's got the merlion on it, which is the Singapore, I guess, mascot. But in any case, we're not talking about that cover. We're talking about the regular cover A. And so it's a really eye-catching cover that is going to pull you into this first issue of Volume 6. And we see Steve Rogers as Captain America front and center of this cover. And it looks like, we've had this discussion, I think, many times. Does Cap need a parachute when he's jumping out of a plane? Does he just wear one to make everyone else feel comfortable, or does he really need one? And many times we've seen Cap jump out of a plane without a parachute. And in this particular image, it looks as if he has been jumping out of an airplane. He's got that sort of his arms spread out a little bit, his legs a little spread, as if he is coasting through the air. On his right arm, he's got the shield. His left arm is clenched into a fist, but behind him, we see a 5-pointed star. And in that star, we see what looks like maybe Times Square, a city street in New York City with traffic and lights and billboards and windows of buildings. But behind that star, we see a black and white rendition that looks like it could be a World War II newsreel. So we see bombs and aircraft and soldiers and ships at sea. So it's really a mashup of modern day with the World War II era. And again, Captain America, smack dab in the middle of it, coasting down into a fight.
And the cover, as far as like the logo at the top, it's very reminiscent of the same font that has been used for many years, including going back to the Golden Age. And it's just a plain Captain and then America. And there's no red, white, and blue. There's no really anything like that. And it just really stands out as well. And what was the cover price for this back then, Bob?
Gosh, I don't know. Was it 12 cents?
I think it
I
was two ninety
wish.
nine.
I wish it was 12 cents. Where are those
Yeah,
days gone, right? Two ninety
uh,
nine. Even that seems
I think it was.
right. 2.99 seems like that would be a real
You know what? I
steal
got my
these days.
actually, Bob. Holy crap, 3.99.
Was it had it gone up to 3.99 already?
It really had. 2011 was 3.99. And guess what? If you, I just went on to online price guide. Uh, near mint copy of this, $4. So if you went ahead and bought like 20 copies of this, thinking like I'm
Yeah,
gonna get rich someday,
it's a number one.
you're gonna have to wait.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh gosh.
yeah.
Unless your methodology was to buy up the supply.
Did I tell you the time? Did I ever tell you the story about buying Superman #1 by John Byrne?
No, no.
So I don't remember when this came out, but it was in the 80s, and it was a the first number one Superman in like decades, right? And it was by written and drawn by John Byrne, who was a really really hot uh artist at the time. And it actually was it was 1987. So I'm a teenager. I have my license to drive, right?
Yeah.
So I'm
Uh-huh.
going to the comic book store, and at this point, I had started setting up at some shows to sell comics, like back
Uh-huh.
issues and things. And I made a deal with the owner of the local comic shop that I used to go to, which was Captain Blue Hen in Newark, Delaware.
All right.
This was the original building, not the one they currently are in. And I was like, I want to buy, I think it was 100 copies. 100 copies. So at a discount, right? Like he made some money, but I got it well under cover price. I want to say cover price at that time was 60 cents. I could be wrong, but I just, what I'm going to say. But it was like a major investment for me, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
I think it was like, what, $50 or
Yeah.
something like
That's a
that.
lot of gas money.
It was a lot of money in 1987 for a teenager. And I get these with the idea that I was going to hold on to them for a little while and then sell them. They never really went up, Bob. So when I was setting up at shows over the years, I actually put up a sign, free Superman #1 with any X purchase, $10 purchase or something like
Yeah.
that.
Uh-huh.
Because at that point I just had to give them away.
Yeah.
And
Taking up
and
space.
I may have made some sales doing that. I
Yeah.
don't know, but
Huh. Oh, interesting.
yeah.
So you don't have any of those. I mean, it could any day now. They
Yeah,
could
yeah,
take off. So
exactly.
you just
Yeah,
never
I'm
know.
because I was the only one who ever thought of that. All right, Bob. So we talked about doing this recap that we each were going to take, go back and forth on issues, and you lost, so you get to go first.
Well, all right. Well, thank you, Rick. So let's just jump into issue one. So we begin this issue with a scene of Steve and Sharon getting into their formal attire. Now, who knows what they're doing? Might be a night out on the town. Maybe they're going to the theater. They're going to get dinner or something like that. But they're getting all fancied up for sure. But as Steve is getting dressed, he is reflecting, right? He's a reflective sort of guy, and he's thinking about his status as the man out of time. This is something we've revisited throughout the decades. And he's musing to himself that, oftentimes he doesn't even really think about it as much anymore. And we get to see various scenes of him fighting battles against Ultron or the Skrulls. And because of he's so busy, sometimes he says he forgets how old he really is. And that is until something happens to remind him of, in fact, how old he is and how those around him are aging and eventually dying. So we learn in the next page after this reflection that in fact they're not going out to dinner, they're not going to the theater, but they're really going to go and attend the funeral of Margaret Peggy Carter, who we
Hmm.
last saw living in a senior living facility outside of Washington D.C. back in the previous volume, issue 49. And so this funeral is at a at the Père was it Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris, and Steve and Sharon are there, and Nick Fury and Dum Dum Dugan are there as well. And as they depart the services, Steve notices that there's this laser sight trained on Dum Dum Dugan's chest, and
Can
he's
I just
able.
pause for a second, Bob?
Sure,
Just
yeah.
to pause on that. So, yeah, you just took us through like the first five pages, and I gotta say, art is beautiful.
Oh, it's stunning. Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. I don't know if I've seen Sharon Carter look better than she does by Steve, than by Steve McNiven.
100%. I was thinking the exact same thing as I was reading through these issues.
Yeah. And so, but Steve looks really cool. Nick Fury. I mean, the expression on Nick Fury's face as he kind of like almost looks a little embarrassed and he's kind of, wrinkling his brow. Yeah, just like that. Yeah. And he anyway, so the art is absolutely beautiful, but um I think it's apropos to point out that it is Peggy Carter, right? It's keep in mind with the movie that's coming out right now, which,
Right.
First Avenger is a period piece that Peggy Carter has a major role in it. Now, she's changed, like than she is from the comics because in the movie she's British, which she's not in the comics. And so we've got that. But I also think it was a good choice by Brubaker, and who knows, maybe Tom Brevoort suggested this as well, to have something that takes place in World War II in this story, because people are going to be seeing the movie, and maybe that will resonate with them a little bit. So we're going to get that in this story. So anyway,
Yeah, no,
I
that's a good point. All good points.
yeah,
They're drawing some linkages with what's going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so folks have an easy transition as they jump into the comics. So as
laser
I said,
point.
yeah. So as I said, Steve sees this laser sight trained on Dum Dum, and he's able to tackle Dum Dum out of the way just as that bullet fires, and it crashes into a headstone behind the both of them. And so Steve sees the shooter, and he begins pursuit, and he thinks he's got him. But when the shooter turns to look at him, Steve hesitates for a split second because he's surprised and a little bit shocked. And we don't know this right away, but eventually we find out that like he recognizes that guy. But it's just enough of a hesitation that this shooter can jump onto the back of a motorcycle. And as he begins to speed away, he turns back again and he fires a rocket propelled grenade right at Steve Rogers' feet. And of course, it explodes and destroys a car and throws Cap in. Of course, he's in his civilian attire, throws him for several feet. And he gets up. He's not harmed, although his clothes are quite tattered. And as the rest of them gather around to see, what's if he's okay, Steve says, I just saw someone I haven't seen since 1944. And when Sharon approaches him and says, "What do you mean by that?" Steve responds, "I think Jimmy Jankowitz just woke up." So that's an interesting a little cliffhanger that it leaves you with, but we're not going to get that resolved right now, Rick, because we're going to jump back to 1944 in Paris. And so we're in a
Can I
room.
pause here?
You sure can.
And listen, if you guys are on YouTube or Spotify on the video, I'm gonna be adding images to these because this is just amazing stuff. That when you said that grenade blew up the car, wow. There is two amazing panels where the car blows up and leans forward towards Cap. So it's like the back of it is being pushed into the air and it's leaning forward and then falling and exploding. It's all on big fireball and Steve's jumping from it. Amazing scenery. Amazing scenery.
It's just stunning art, right? Really,
Mhm.
really beautiful stuff. So as I said, the next page, we're back in Paris in 1944, and we see Cap, we see Sergeant Nick Fury, we see Dum Dum Dugan and Peggy Carter, and a fifth person uh, who looks an awful lot like the guy we just saw shoot at Dum Dum. He's in the room too, and we learn that this guy's name is codename Bravo, and he's tall with white hair cut into kind of a loose, outgrown flat top, and he's wearing what appears to be almost like a full bodysuit made out of leather, and it's got this weird sort of black and red pattern all over it. But right in the middle of his chest, I don't know if you noticed this, but that's a red nautical flag. And in
Mm.
fact, it's the signal flag for Bravo, which is an alphanumeric character that you use in naval signaling to send messages back and forth to ships. And that one flag can also mean a very specific thing. It can mean that we're transporting or moving dangerous cargo. So a little bit perhaps a play on that nautical flag there. But in
That's
any
cool, Bob. Now listen, listeners, you don't get this anywhere else, right? Like I brought my whole former comic book store owner thought process into this and gave you but Bob's bringing his former military into it. Wow, I didn't have any clue about that, Bob. Thank you for that. But listen, I'm going to tell you, you're getting a full circle right here of knowledge.
Exactly. Yes. So our codename Bravo dude, he's also wearing this kind of modified domino mask, right? With these reddish lenses in it. So kind of like a cross between his Ray-Bans and the traditional domino mask. So an interesting look. In any case, the six of them are there and they're discussing Baron Zemo and they're planning an assault on Baron Zemo. They're not quite sure where he's holed up right now, but they do think he's at the secret base of this new outfit that's calling itself Hydra. And it's tricky, as I said, because they don't know exactly where that Hydra base is located. And so Bravo wants to know, well, how the heck are we going to get in there if we don't really know exactly where it is? And that's when Fury introduces a seventh individual in the room, a young boy by the name of Jimmy Jankowicz, the guy that we just heard Steve mentioned in the previous scene. Now, for those, I don't want to tell too much about Jimmy Jankowicz right yet, but it's important to know that this is a character that goes all the way back to the Golden Age,
Mm-hmm.
where he was better known as Jimmy Jupiter. First introduced in Marvel Mystery Comics 28 back in December 1941, and we'll learn more about Jimmy Jupiter and what he's capable of a little bit later on. So I don't want to dive too deep into that and ruin the surprise later on. In any case, then the next scene, we find Steve and Sharon and Nick at this top secret nursing facility in Virginia. I didn't even know they had those, but that's where I want to stay if I have to go to a nursing home, right? This top secret facility. And we see an elderly man sitting in a wheelchair. And we learn that this is, in fact, the same Jimmy Jankowicz. He's an old guy now, and he just awoke from a decades long coma. Even so, the doctors are telling Nick that
And he'd
Jimmy
be
is,
like 90, like 91 right now, right?
yeah, he'd
Yeah.
definitely be early 90s, right? Late 80s, early 90s. And the doctor's telling Nick that, yes, he woke up from the coma, but he's still catatonic, which means, in other words, that while he seems to be awake, he's unresponsive to other people or to the environment. He's just sort of in a vegetative state. Steve wonders if Jimmy waking up might have had something to do with the sudden appearance of this codename Bravo dude that was shooting at him at the cemetery. And when Nick asks, "Well, Bravo was one of our partners back in the war. Why would he be shooting at you? Why wouldn't he just come and contacted us and tried to reach out to us?" And Steve suggests that maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's an old hatred that Bravo has toward him. And in
What?
fact,
Who would hate Captain
I know he's
America?
such a likable guy. But it seems like in the next sort of vignette, we get a better understanding of why Bravo might be a little upset at Cap. So we're back in Paris, 1944, and we see Bravo and Peggy kissing in the very first panel of this vignette. And she pushes him away. And we learned that, in fact, they'd been lovers, right? Maybe it was, love in a foxhole sort of thing. I just had Aerosmith "Love in an Elevator" playing in my mind. But in any
Loving a
case,
foxhole.
so anyway, they were together for a short time. But he's upset because she doesn't want anything to do with him anymore. And he questions whether it's because he can't measure up to the super soldier, presumably, of course, Steve Rogers. So she departs, and shortly thereafter, he looks down on the street from the window of the building that they're in, and he sees Cap and Peggy kissing, locked in an embrace, locking the lips down there on the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so now we know why Bravo might be a little bit upset at Steve Rogers.
Yep.
So back in the modern time, we figure out that Steve is telling Sharon the story, and she asks, "So wait, you stole Aunt Peggy from another guy?" And Steve begins to explain that it's complicated, right? But before he can tell his side of the story in a complete way, the three of them, him and Nick and Sharon, are attacked by a number of Hydra soldiers. Now they manage to subdue the attackers, but just as they're doing this, Sharon is almost hit by a speeding car that's leaving the facility. And as that car speeds away, we see that Jimmy Jupiter, James Jankowicz, is in the back seat of that car. And we surmise at this point that Bravo and Hydra must be working together. And for some reason, they've wanted to kidnap Jimmy.
Uh, uh hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. You just skipped, you used one sentence to describe 5 pages of amazing battle art.
Yeah, it was some pretty good art there.
I'm sure you were going to get back to it, but I got to tell you, this is some really cool stuff. So if we get to these pages, and I'll put them up here, it's double page spread and not full page spread, right? But it's a double page because it goes across the top, then it goes across the middle, then it goes across the bottom. And, Cap gets hit, or Steve gets hit in the back with a bazooka of some sort. But it's okay. He's wearing a shield on his back. And hey, no one notices it because he's wearing a jacket.
Got a top coat. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a cool explosion with Nick Fury, but then you turn the page, ooh la la. Okay, I'm gonna mention a few things here
Right.
during the course of this episode.
I'm just happy you said ooh la la.
You know,
That's nice.
people have regrets in life, and you say, I don't have any regrets. Well, guess what? I got regrets.
You passed up on this page, didn't you?
I passed up on this double page splash of Cap throwing his shield, and then the shield goes through a car window outside the other end of the car window, knocking down three Hydra agents, ricocheting, coming back. Cap catches it in a really cool way, and it's just a badass couple of pages. I really regret I missed out on this one. Then yes. Oh, and then by the way, Jimmy's in the back of a car being driven away. Proceed.
I think as long as you're talking about these pages, just that one of Cap tackling Sharon out of the way of that speeding car,
Hmm.
you can feel the motion coming off the page. Even the hubcaps of the tire of the car,
Hmm.
they're blurred,
Yeah,
giving you the sense of motion. Really, really wonderful stuff. So
really is.
yes, now we're back in the story, and we're in the last couple pages of the story, and we find codename Bravo entering a room where Baron Zemo is standing. And
The
is
original
not the original, the young man, the younger man, the boyish one.
helmet. Yeah.
I just saw Dark Helmet again
Yeah.
on my stream of consciousness, right? So they're
But he's
toasting.
holding a glass of wine and he's wearing his mask.
He is. But
It,
I not to
it,
quibble, but I think that might be a brandy snifter.
oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, my bad. Uh, uh, thanks for calling that out. So, how is he going to drink it?
I'm just guessing he just pours it through the fabric. It's a
But
great
wouldn't
way
there
to
be stains
it's a
on
great
his?
it's a great way to it's a great way to strain out insects and
I
such.
guess. Yeah. If it was a glass of wine or a little piece of cork left in the bottle, he could strain
That's
it
right.
that
Just
way.
strain it out, falls
But
out.
wouldn't there be like some stains around the mouth?
Maybe that's why his maybe that's why it's purple.
All right.
Ah, yeah. So we find out that, in fact, Baron Zemo and Codename Bravo seem to be working together with one goal: to destroy Captain America.
Dun, dun,
Da!
dun. All right. Let's get to number two. I'm going to read the solicitation for that. Superstars Ed Brubaker and Steve McNiven continue their quintessential Cap story arc. All right, Bob, I got to say, that is a little bit boastful and premature. We haven't even read the second issue and are saying it's quintessential.
Quintessential. Yeah, it's unprecedented.
Find out the secrets of their mission that went wrong in WW2 and why old friends are now old enemies. Huh? I can understand if it said new enemies, but old enemies. That's interesting.
Hmm.
It's action and history and a cage match for your comic reading pleasure.
Nice. A cage match for your comic reading pleasure. There's a nice turn of phrase.
All right. This had a solicitation date of cover date of October 2011, release date August 17th, 2011. Creators, writer, penciler are the same. Mark Morales is not the inker and he's not back. It's Jay Leinstein and
Mm.
Dexter Vines. Dexter Vines, nice guy. Had him in the store a couple times for a book signing. Colorist Justin Ponsor, same as that. Letterer Joe Caramanga, and then editor Tom Brevoort. Bob, take us through the cover.
I would love to. So this, there's something about this cover that really jumps out at me, Rick. And of course, I'll talk a bit about Cap in a second. But the background we see a flaming explosion with smoke, and you can feel the heat coming off the page. It's almost photorealistic. I'm not quite sure how they pulled this one off. Maybe it was a combination of a photo and some specialized inking and coloring. But anyway, it's a really it's a vibrant feel to it, as if there is a big explosion going on behind Cap, and we see Cap in the foreground, and he's coming off the right side of the page, so he's almost horizontal, what are they, parallel to the bottom of the page. So he's in motion, moving from the right side to the left side of the cover. And he's got a really fierce look of determination on him, on his face. And we see a lot of detail in his costume, right? We see the chainmail of his overshirt, really very, very palpable here. And he's throwing the shield toward the reader, and you can almost reach out and touch it. It's so it's just so well rendered. And it's almost as if it's ready to come right off the front of the page. So we're in the middle of a fight. We don't know who Cap's fighting, but he's looks like he's in it to win it.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like he's having a tough go of it as well.
Indeed. And another big regret of mine, Bob, I didn't buy this cover when I had the opportunity.
Goodness,
Yeah,
this is a
3 years
great
ago,
cover.
I had the opportunity to buy this cover, and I hesitated. I think you know what it was. The face. There was something about the face that I didn't
Huh.
love because I just and I didn't get the cover, and someone in our group uh, had gotten the cover.
Uh-huh.
Carlo, I say Olivar.
Huh.
Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrongly, Carlo.
Okay.
But Carlo's a great guy. Love, nice guy. He's in the Facebook fairly regularly. Maybe he's listening to the show, but yeah, he owns the cover to this, and
Nice.
uh, I have regrets, Carlo.
I'd love to see the original art for it, because I'd be very curious to see what that background looks like
Mm.
when
Yep.
it was penciled.
All right, so I'm going to take you through the synopsis. I'm going to actually I should probably open up the comic book and read along as I'm doing this. Um, and we didn't do in the first issue, Bob. I regret, and I realized it like when you're into the second page. We didn't read the beginning, like the top. And when we start new volumes, I like to see what the writer and editor chose to put in there, which is a little different, each time you do a new different volume. So at the very top of this one, it says, during the dark days of the early 1940s, a covert military experiment turned Steve Rogers into America's first super soldier, Captain America. Throughout the war, Cap and his partner Bucky fought alongside our infantry and with a group of heroes known as the Invaders. In the closing months of WW2, Captain America and Bucky were both presumed dead in an explosion over the English Channel. Decades later, the figure was found trapped in ice, and Captain America was revived. Having slept through the majority of the 20th century, Steve Rogers awakened to a world he never imagined. A world where war had moved from the battlefield to the city streets. A world in dire need of Captain America. Now, I thought this was interesting. Uh, Two things. It talks about the invaders in here. I don't recall these talking about invaders in past, unless it was in the series of the invaders. So interesting that they did that. And the other thing too is they put this in first person and said alongside our infantry, because typically these are written in like a third person,
Right.
and so
Hmm.
oh anyway, things that stood out to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
All right, so we open up, and the first couple of pages here are Captain America crossing a snowy wasteland, and maybe it's a dream, because it's kind of he's not sure exactly where he is, but he's been repeating this over and over. And then there's this bi-rotor copter that hovers over him. And we turn the page, and reality now is there's Steve, Sharon, and Nick Fury, and they are talking about Jimmy Jupiter. And so Jimmy Jupiter was a boy who could enter the land of nowhere, which was another dimension where he could shape anything with his imagination to bring back into the real world. And he was found out when he actually brought a two-headed cat to school. And what who wouldn't do that, right? Like what kid wouldn't come back and be
If you
like,
got one.
"Yeah, I do too have one." And then he brings it in, right? And so he was selected to help the Allies infiltrate a Hydra base. And their advantage was that in nowhere, Jimmy could hone in on other people's dreams, such as a few Hydra agents, so that his nowhere portals could lead Codename Bravo to them. So while Cap and Peggy Carter and Bucky were assaulting the front of Baron Zemo's fortress, and when I say Baron Zemo, I mean the original. This is Heinrich Zemo, Helmut's dad. Jimmy was to bring Dum Dum Dugan and Codename Bravo in through nowhere. However, a Hydra mole in the French resistance smashed Jimmy on the head, sending him into a coma and sealing the portal with Bravo, his team, and the Hydra agents inside it for decades. And since time passes differently, the people trapped in nowhere haven't aged. Now we cut to present and we get to and by the way, so this is all being explained and Sharon's just like, I don't know. She's kind of taking it all in, and Cap is doing his best to blame himself.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and Nick's like, it wasn't your fault. And he's like, well, I was distracted. Bucky would have seen it. And then I love this. Sharon's like, enough. It was 65 years ago. What happened?
Yeah.
And I love that relationship that Sharon has with Steve. She can call him on his moping, on his BS, and so on. And by the way, Bob, would you like to describe what Sharon's wearing in this particular issue?
Sure, I'd love to. She's got that amazing, all the other Shield agents have that black bodysuit with the white,
Hmm.
holsters and pouches and
Some
belts.
would say navy blue.
Yeah, that's midnight blue, right?
Yeah,
Which is, looks like black, right? But not Sharon. No, she's got she has the white skin tight suit. And she is rocking it in McNiven's art here.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, she's got a little zipper that goes right here,
Yeah.
right,
Right.
right underneath her neckline,
Yeah.
right? And that zipper can go pretty far down if she wanted to,
It
but
could.
it's not, right?
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
respectable.
Right.
It's just showing basically her neck, and
Right.
that's it.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing that out for future reference.
Okay.
All right. So as I said, Jimmy Jupiter's head is caved in and he's in a coma. And so we cut back, to the story, and then they back in present. And so intelligence has tracked Bravo and his team to an AIM base. AIM stands for Bob,
Advanced idea mechanics.
and they've ransacked and they spotted the hero's plane. So Cap leaps out and he lands hard on the ground, as you pointed out before, without a parachute. And this is a pretty amazing. Well, him jumping from the plane, which by the way is blowing up behind him, and he's got his shield over top of him. It's really cool. It's just a really cool image. Um, it's in the middle of a double page splash, and then the next one where lands on top of a like looks like a vehicle of some sort, and it makes a big noise, Bob.
Kathoom. That's how my knees would sound if I did that.
No, your knees would
Crack.
sound like coming through your ears.
You wouldn't hear
Um,
my knees over my scream of pain. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Uh, now I want to cut to the fact that Dum Dum Dugan and Nick Fury and Sharon Carter have all landed, and now they're battling Hydra. And I'm gonna say the zipper went down a little bit on Sharon Carter,
Yeah, it's loose.
right?
Oh, I can't. It's like it happens. The same thing happens to my fly, Rick.
I'm gonna say that zipper went down probably about 6 or 7 inches.
Sure did. Yeah.
Uh, and so she got cleavage now. Now
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you this. There's one of three options here.
I only see two options, but okay.
The options are Steve McNiven, he's probably drawing a page a day,
Yeah.
right? And a few days ago, and maybe he's not doing them all in order.
Sure.
And so he forgot how he drew Sharon with the zipper up to the neck,
Could be.
right?
Yeah.
That's option number one. Option number two, what you said, the zipper just came down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Option number three, I like this one. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
She deliberately pulls it down to distract when she is fighting the Hydra agents.
Huh. Interesting. Interesting. I wouldn't have come up with that one. I thought maybe you were going to say that it gets hot when you're fighting.
Oh, that's true.
You know, I think this is like a Stark created uniform for her, right? So it's like has all these capabilities, and I think it just gets hot.
I think we're spending too much time on this.
It's got to air it out, man.
All right. So Cap smashes his way in and he knocks out a Hydra goon named Brentley, but is unable to stop the Hydra Queen from stepping through a portal he was guarding. Who is this Hydra Queen? I haven't seen this Hydra Queen before. Have you seen this Hydra Queen before?
I don't believe we've been introduced to her yet.
No, this is her first appearance, Bob.
Yes.
And so Cap and Fury realize that their quarry must have access to teleport technology from nowhere that's beyond AIM's capabilities. And even more strangely, as Sharon notes, most of the Hydra goons wear the regular uniform, implying that some deal was being made. So there's the nowhere Hydra agents that have a slightly different uniform, and then there's these Hydra agents which have the classic. So it looks like two different Hydra agents are kind of forming an alliance here.
Huh.
So as night falls, Cap can't seem to go to sleep. And I like that first panel of his apartment building, because that was the same one from Volume 5, and I guess it's right there on the Manhattan River, right? And you
Right.
see the skyline there. It's
Yeah.
nighttime. I like that. And anyway, so he can't go to sleep. Shannon reassures him that Fury promised to call them if anything came up, and Cap tells her that it's bugging him that Bravo has access to high technologies, but strangely wants Jimmy. Reluctantly, he agrees to go to sleep, if that's what you want to call it. Because all we see in that last panel is that she's got her arms reached out and he's heading her direction on the bed. Suddenly, next page, Sharon experiences a lucid dream in which Bravo is influencing it, made the dreamscape apocalyptic up until he kisses her. Sharon breaks it off, guessing that all this can't be her dream. Remarking that she doesn't just look like her aunt, Bravo promises to see her soon. Just as Sharon wakes up and Cap is dressed up, a large hand grabs Cap through the window, and the owner is in fact a Merodroid who accuses Cap of stealing his dream. And that is the end of that. I really do like that panel of Cap putting on his mask and there's a shadow of a hand behind him coming, before it's coming through the glass. It's just outside the glass.
It's like King Kong. Yeah.
That's so cool,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that final panel on that last page of Ameridroid reaching up and having his hand wrapped around his big red gauntleted hand wrapped around Cap's waist is just really a fabulous study in like depth perception as we're
Indeed.
looking down on this.
Especially since he's only supposed to be 16 feet tall. He looks bigger than that.
He looks a little bit larger than that. Yeah.
All right, Bob, should we get to number 3?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So for this one, the solicitation is short and sweet. It is the action doesn't stop as Brubaker and McNiven keep rocking Captain America's world. It's Cap versus Cap. Or is it? Only one way to find out. Buy this issue. That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. All right. I'm sold.
All right. Cover date November 2011. Release date September 21st, 2011. In this one, Ed Brubaker, Steve McNiven, inker Jay Leistein. So there's no longer any help there. It's strictly him. And colorist Justin Ponzer, letterer Joe Caramanga, editor Tom Brevoort. Let's talk about this cover, Bob.
Oh, what a great cover, Rick, huh?
Yeah.
We're on a New York City street. We got some high rises in the back, some skyscrapers. But in the foreground, we see what presumably is Ameridroid's fist punching up through the sidewalk, or maybe it's the street itself. And we just see the red gauntleted fist of the Ameridroid. But the really cool thing is it's apparently it connected with Cap, who we see flying backwards through the air, having dropped his shield. And we see all kinds of action going around, right? We've got a couple on the sidewalk. We've got a taxi driver leaning out his window. We've got a fire hydrant that's been knocked over. There's water flying everywhere. I mean, we're smack dab in the middle of the action we began to see at the close of the last issue.
Yep. It is. It certainly pulls you in, right? And Bob, you know who owns this cover?
Is it you?
Not this guy. No, nope. That would be my nemesis, Alberto
Yes.
Gonzalez owns
All
this
right.
cover. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. He and for those who aren't familiar with Alberto, listen, I joke. Alberto's a great guy. We get along great. He's a good guy. So anyway, episode 156 was when we did our art captivated, and Alberto was a guest on the show and took us through his original art, Captain America, and this was, I think, one of the covers. But he does own this cover.
Well, lucky him. Lucky him. It's a great cover to have.
So let's talk about these first couple pages. We get to see a little bit more of this Queen Hydra, and we get to see a little bit more of this Queen Hydra.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Yeah, so essentially she is from the other world, right? And she does not like our world and finds it to be disgusting and horrible. And so I think Codename Bravo does as well.
Indeed. And we learn his name is Richard and her name is Grace. With not a least bit of irony.
Yeah. So if they had a child and it was a boy, would that be Dick Grayson?
I like that. Very nice. Very nice. We open this issue with a scene. Old man Jimmy Jankowicz is strapped into a wheelchair and he's got some sort of device on his head. And Bravo and the Hydra Queen are sort of looking on. And apparently they're trying to use his mind to open up the doorway again to the land of nowhere. But he's old and sick. And as the doctor said at the retirement home, catatonic. As Bravo says, his brain function is low. Now, as you pointed out, she's complaining at this point about how dirty and unkempt and disgusting this reality is, and how she'd prefer to be back in the land of nowhere. And she proceeds to disrobe and get into the shower. And she invites him in with her to help her wash the filth of this reality off. Now, one of the interesting things, I don't know why this was so interesting to me, Rick, but there's a panel in here that shows her beginning to disrobe, and perhaps your eyes would be drawn to that. But my eyes were drawn because I'm a very self-disciplined sort of individual, to a little plaque on the wall that said that the shower temperature was at 82. And I was like 82, that doesn't seem very comfortable, right? And so I was forced to like look up what the average ideal shower temperature is supposed to be. And it's supposed to be between 98 degrees Fahrenheit, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and no more than 105 degrees Fahrenheit. So who sets their shower at 82 degrees?
Bob, I did not pay attention to any of that.
I wondered if she's just cold. And by that, I mean, she's from an alternate reality, right?
mhm.
And maybe she is just a cold hearted person. And this is sort of, an indication that it's a stretch, I know, but I was curious.
Or maybe Bob, maybe she needs a cold shower.
Maybe she needs a cold shower. That could be as well. So in any case, in the next scene, we're back to Steve and Ameridroid, and they're battling it out. And this is a continuation of what we saw with Steve getting plucked out of his apartment by Ameridroid. And it does appear that Cap is not faring too well. And it's kind of a funny scene here because Sharon tries to help by chucking his shield to Steve so that he could use it to defeat Ameridroid. But she's not particularly practiced at throwing the shield, and it bounces around a little bit and then gets stuck way up high in the wall of a building.
I really do appreciate this. I love this.
Yeah, it's a great and
She's like, catch. And she's like, all shield agent, athlete, catch, great form. Tonk.
tonk, right? Yeah. Oops. Yeah. Right.
And she goes, crap. I love that panel.
Yeah. There's also a nice little black and white vignette panel here, because if readers aren't familiar with Ameridroid, we get a little bit of the background. Ameridroid is formerly a guy by the name of Lyle Decker, who we first saw in the story arc 217 to issue 221, and then he came back in 261 to 263, where we thought that maybe he had been destroyed at that point, but apparently not. He's been co-opted by Baron Zemo, and we see him here again, and we'll find out a little bit more about him later. But
can I add to that?
Sure
Because
can.
I was a little curious as well, so I did some research on him. And you're right. He had two story arcs.
Yeah.
Right. It was 218 to 221, 261,
Yeah.
263. So he was created by Don Glut and Sal Buscema.
Mm-hmm.
And then J.M. DeMatteis decided to bring him back for that Red Skull, that first 4-issue story arc that J.M. DeMatteis did for Captain America, which had like Nomad, the new Nomad, right, and all and so on. I don't know. I salute Ed Brubaker for being like, I'm going to go pull this character out of obscurity and put him into this story for a brief period of time.
Yeah. I know, right? Yeah, and of course we'll find out what happens to the character, but it was sort of like, of all the characters he could have pulled out of the mythos, why Ameridroid? But it works, right? I mean, we're having a great battle here on the streets of New York, and Cap, and as you said, he's much taller here than 16 feet. He's probably a good 30 feet in the way he's rendered here. But they're battling, and of course now Sharon has thrown away his shield. So her next idea is to call in the cavalry by picking up the phone and ringing up Nick Fury. So calls Nick Fury. Nick Fury says, I'll be right over. But before she could finish the conversation, Zemo appears in the apartment. They're of course several stories up, and they start wrestling a little bit, right, fighting it out. And this is where we learn that Sharon has certain capabilities in her suit that match Zemo's capabilities in his suit. But at a certain point, when Cap is able to put down a Meridroid, Zemo realizes his time is up, and he chucks Sharon out the window of the apartment building.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It is a cool scene. It is a cool scene, and of course Cap has to rescue her, right? And he does. He manages to snatch her out of the air and save her just in time. So in the next scene, we're at the Project Pegasus research lab in New York City, and we've got the Ameridroid laid out on a slab. And again, Nick and Sharon and Kappa there, and they're trying to figure out what the heck is going on with Ameridroid. Where did he come from, number one? And how was it that he was really kind of defeated relatively easily by Cap? Normally, it would take a lot more to put Ameridroid down. So it's a bit of a mystery. And
Now, were you mystified by that, Bob? Because I saw
wasn't.
it as a Trojan horse immediately.
Did you? Did you? I didn't really think that much about it, quite honestly. I thought it was a distraction, but I don't know if I was necessarily thinking about a Trojan horse. I probably should have, because it's a pretty obvious one when in retrospect.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's almost a little reminiscent of Roger Stern, John Byrne, Baron von Strucker, LMD,
right,
right? Like
yeah, right,
he was there, then he was booby trapped.
right. Yeah.
That's what I was
That's a
suspecting.
good point. That's a good point. Yeah. Well, it just so happens that down on the city street, there is an ambulance parked on the sidewalk of all places. And in the ambulance, we see that it's codename Bravo, and it is the Hydra Queen. And we see Jimmy Jankowicz on a gurney again with this device strapped to his head. And it appears that the Queen and Bravo are up to something, and it's all the more obvious that they're up to something because Bravo puts on his little uh, domino mask with his red lenses. So that's a sign that something's going down. So something's going on. Suddenly there's some gunshots. A couple cops get gunned down. The word gets passed up to Sharon. She tells Steve and Nick that there's been an incident down on the ground. And then what do you know, Rick? That Trojan horse comes back to life. A mirror droid jumps up off the table, knocks down Nick Fury, lunges at Steve Rogers, and both Steve and Ameridroid go flying out the window down toward the sidewalk. But before they can hit the ground, a portal opens up right below them in midair, and they fly through the portal and disappear from this reality. And on the next page, we see Steve and another man, much younger, dark hair, mustache, come popping up from the bottom of what appears to be an ocean or a lake or something like that. And the young man says, "Mein Gott, he wasn't lying. Zemo said in this place I could have my youth again. I can have another chance to do it right. I can." Boom. And then we see Codename Bravo appear on the shore and put a bullet right in his head. And as it turns out, this is a de-aged Lyle Decker. Yes, the man whose mind was in the Ameridroid that we first saw way back in Captain America 217. But now, actually, I think his first appearance might have been in 218. But now he's even younger than when we first was introduced to him. So he's a very young man here, or at least very briefly, before Bravo puts him down. And Bravo says, "Sorry, Nazis don't get a second chance in my world." And Cap is outraged, right? I mean, he just shot a man down in cold blood, and he chucks his shield at Bravo, and Bravo simply reaches out and catches it in
A la
mid-flight.
Winter Soldier in a second
Exactly,
movie.
exactly the same. He catches it with one hand and simply chucks it aside, and then cracks Steve across the face with a right hook. And then he says, "But like I said, Rogers, this is my world." And that's the end of that issue.
Cool story. What are you thinking so far of this story?
I think it's great. I think it's great, you know, and it grows on me every time I read it as well. I remember reading it the first time and I'm like, who the heck is this codename Bravo guy? This guy is like not all that interesting. But you know, the more times I read this story, the more I get sucked into it, and the more I really appreciate some of the nuances. And as we learn more about the motivations of Bravo and the Hydra Queen and Zemo, it even gets more interesting. So it's the kind of story where it really does build over the course of the arc toward its denouement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know what's better, the story or the art.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, the art really does just really bring out the story to its full potential.
All right, should we get to number 4?
Yes, please.
All right, love this cover.
Yes, it's pretty awesome. I remember when I was getting a subscription in the mail when this first came out. So I remember opening up the envelope and pulling this one out and being like, "What the heck? What a dynamic cover!"
Yeah, the solicitation for this one again, short and sweet. Brubaker and McNiven continue their heart-stopping run on Cap with a nightmarish trip down memory lane, and that's bad news when your memory lane goes right through World War II. And the cover date, January 2012, released November 16th, 2011. Brubaker, McNiven, Leinstein, Panzer, Caramanga, Brevoort, all the same creators. On the cover, McNiven and Panzer take us through it, Bob.
All right. Well, we have a cloudy background, but the interesting thing is the clouds are red. I mean, they're blood red, right? And normally I would think that, well, maybe that's just the ground or that's just a plain colored background. But what we see here is we see 6 bombs falling to the ground, and these are the old like dumb bombs that were dropped by like B-52s and you know, some of the old bombing runs over Nazi Germany, and they're just iron dumb bombs equipped with fins that allow them to, you know, dive in and drop on targets without any guidance whatsoever. And we see them spread out across the cover, but the one in the middle has Cap on it, and he's chained down to this bomb. It looks like maybe a 500-pound bomb. He's actually chained, uh, completely secured to the bomb. And he's got this look on his face like you can almost feel the bomb falling to the ground, and he's straining against these chains that got him tied very, very securely. But the really interesting thing I think about how these bombs are rendered is that there's a little bit of blur to the motion of the tail fins, and we see a little bit of the cloud cover obscuring a bit of the tail fins as well. So there's this real sense that the bombs are coming out of the clouds above them, and of course, you know, Cap is dead center on in one of them.
It's a stunning cover. It absolutely is. And I don't know personally the owner, but I do see the owner in the Comic Art Fans Gallery. His name is Raymond. I want to say Raymond Breyer. Anyway, he's the lucky guy who's had this cover since 2012. If he still owns it, I don't know if he sold it or not, but it's a really cool cover. All right, I will take us through this one, Bob. Opening this up, so Captain America thinks he's living the American dream. And so we see Cap as an astronaut with his wife, astronaut Sharon Carter. And you know, Earth is a better place, right? Humanity is expanding into space, but it's all a lie, Bob. He hasn't been, in fact, pulled into the land of nowhere. And Nick Fury stresses the need to find Jimmy Jupiter to get him out. And Cap realizes the lie when he spots a green light coming from a hole in a brick wall. And at this point, he's been a an astronaut, right? And so he kind of gave up being Captain America to be an astronaut. But as he's walking, he sees this hole in the brick wall. Tearing through it, he finds himself in a nightmare. where the world is like this dystopia. And who's there? Codename Bravo reveals, stating that this is what he sees America as since he got out of the land of nowhere. So Bravo is not only mad at him for Peggy Carter, although he maybe he's gotten over that by now, who knows? But when he finally leaves Land of Nowhere and he goes back to America all these decades later, he feels like America is a horrible place to be, and he blames Cap.
Hmm.
So in the real world, Falcon, Sam Wilson, he's located this Neo Hydra to break in to this company called BT and I, and what is this, like a telecommunications company or something like that?
Yeah.
But so Nick Fury realizes that Hydra tends to use Jimmy to broadcast his nowhere portals across the country. And then inside the studio, the Hydra Queen has her servant hook up Jimmy, on using Jimmy to merge his world with Earth. So she's forced to accelerate her plan when Falcon breaches the perimeter. And then in we cut back then into the Land of Nowhere, as he tosses his old comrade about. Bravo relates how he and his team were trapped in this world and lost two men, and then joining up with the Hydra agents trapped with them, they decided to work together to survive. And then within time, they managed to learn how to shape the Land of Nowhere to their liking. And so a good expression of this is Johnny Bravo is just walking up the side of a building where Cap is falling. Johnny Bravo is just walking. So it's like they have the power to do anything they want in this world. I don't know why they'd want to leave it, to be honest with
I know. It sounds kind of nice.
you. Yeah. But he does view this world as utopia, and he blames Cap for America's fall. And then in the real world, we cut to as they're fighting through the Hydra agents. Sharon makes her way to the room where Jimmy is, and I just want to point out, Bob, as she's fighting, the zipper is now lower again.
You know what, though? It's not nearly as low as the Queen Hydra's or the Hydra Queen.
Well, that's true, but we're not
it's, a,
talking about her. We're talking about
it's a contest.
Sharon. Sharon, when she's not fighting, zipper's up. When she's
Zippers up.
fighting, zipper's down.
I'm telling you, it's heat regulation.
I no longer think it's Steve McNiven not remembering what he did last. It's either like you're saying the outfit just happens to fall that way,
Yeah.
or I think she's trying to distract all the men that she's fighting.
Yeah. Well, look at the size of the zipper fob. It looks
What does that have to
heavy.
do with anything?
It just looks heavy. It's bound to pull the zipper down.
Okay. Yeah, so we do cut to that scene where we do have Sharon confronting Queen Hydra, and she says, "Now I think about my next moves carefully, Agent, or I will put a bullet through the old man's heart, and you'll never see your Captain America again." And sure enough, old man Jimmy Jupiter, is sitting there in a chair with that thing strapped to his head, and she's aiming a gun right at his chest. To be continued, Bob.
Holy cow.
All right. Anything stand out on this one, or you want to get to
Yeah.
five?
Yeah. You know what stands out is that last page. The way those I mean I
The
hate to
way
be
Jimmy Jupiter's drawn with that
the way
contraption on his hat. Yeah.
exactly that's exactly what I was beguiled by. Yes.
Mm. We're
Indeed.
beguiled now.
I'm beguiled.
Okay.
All
All right.
right.
Number five. Number five. Creators are Brubaker, penciler McNiven, but this one has an additional penciler in it. It's Giuseppe Camicoli, I want to say is how you pronounce his name. So some fill-in art here, and nothing against Giuseppe, but there's a distinct difference in the art styles. Anchor Jay Lanestein, but I think Matteo Buffagni is probably inking Giuseppe's work. And then we have two different colorists, but still Joe Caramagna as the letterer and Tom is the editor, along with some other editors as well. Solicitation for this one, again, short and sweet. The grand finale of America Dreamers is here. Cap faces down an old friend, now a new enemy. Now, come on, guys. Which one is it? Is he an old friend and an old enemy, or is he an old friend and now a new enemy? Pick one.
Were they ever friends? I don't know.
I don't know. That's a good point.
Yeah.
But which one of them is right in their view of modern America?
Interesting.
Only Ed Brubaker and Steve McNiven know the answer. You too, if you bought this comic.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Bob, cover. What we got going
Yes.
on
All
here?
right.
McNiven, Morales, and Justin Ponzer.
What a beautiful action-packed cover. So, we've got in the foreground, we've got Bravo, and he's laying on his back as if he'd just been knocked backwards. And he's got both his arms extended with a pistol in each hand, and he's firing directly at Cap's shield because Cap is coming down hard on him with his shield out in front and his right hand cocked and ready to throw a wicked punch. And he's got that look of determination on his face again. So it's almost as if he is twisting in midair as he brings around that right hand to smack Bravo right in the face. And in the background, we have what is an interesting mashup here. We've got what looks to be the American flag in the background, but from the lower right corner, and almost as if it's burning up toward the upper left corner, we have the Hydra flag taking over the American flag. So we see that there's a struggle going on here between the quote unquote heroes of Hydra and the hero of the United States duking it out for supremacy here on the cover.
Bob, I like the cover,
Mm-hmm.
but I also don't like the cover.
Yeah, what don't you like?
Johnny Bravo
Codename
is
Bravo.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, codename Bravo.
Yeah.
Johnny Bravo. How you doing? Um, codename Bravo, Richard Bravo. Um, he would you call him an experienced soldier?
I think he is.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because going back to his WW2 days
Right.
and
And even
everything. So
before then, yeah.
he's an experienced, like he was on a mission with Cap and Bucky and Peggy. So he was at a certain level where he was put there, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, um, an experienced soldier who knows Cap, right?
Yeah.
He has two pistols.
Yeah.
There's a full body of Captain America there.
Yeah.
Why is he aiming both pistols directly at the middle of his shield?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's one way to look at it. Maybe he wasn't aiming at the shield when he started firing, but Cap turned in just that split second in order to put his shield in front of him as the gun was firing. I don't know. I like to give the benefit of the doubt, but I think you make a very excellent point. Right? Codename Bravo is not some newbie at this, right? And we've heard him say in the previous issues that he remembers what it was like before the Depression, right? So, or maybe it's this issue, I can't remember, but he's a little bit older than Steve. Obviously, he's got white hair here,
Right.
And probably older than Nick. So he's definitely an experienced guy. So, yeah,
And look at the expression on his face.
yeah,
He looks calm, cool, collected.
he does. Yeah,
Right? This
yeah,
is not he's not like firing out of like defense, like like
right.
surprise and just
Yeah,
taking his gun and just firing at the biggest thing that's coming at him.
yeah,
No, he is calm, cool, collected. If I'm him, I got one gun towards the top of Cap. I got the other gun at the bottom of Cap. Make
uh-huh.
Cap choose what he wants to protect,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'd be
Good
hitting the
point.
other.
Yeah, good point. All right. So as we start off this issue, we are reminded where the last issue left off. We've got Jimmy Jupiter snugly fastened into his wheelchair with his brain energy device sitting on his head. And we've got the Hydra Queen with a pistol aimed right at his chest. And Sharon Carter is hesitating ever so slightly, not knowing exactly what to do in this situation. And the Queen Hydra is trying to help her out, right? So she's saying, hey, just you move. I'm going to shoot Jimmy Jupiter, and Cap's going to be stuck in the land of nowhere. And Nick asks Sharon, because he's there as well, what's the next move? Now, Sharon realizes that Steve is trapped in nowhere, but so is Bravo. And when she mentions this to the Hydra Queen, the latter replies that as queen, she must make sacrifices. This sort of connects with Sharon at a certain level. And she tells Nick to lower his gun. But as he does so, she lunges at the Hydra Queen, who unfortunately is able to squeeze off a round right into Jimmy's chest before Sharon can even reach her. And the whole room is lit up with an electrical storm around Jimmy that begins to grow in what seems to be intensity. So back in the land of nowhere, Cap and Bravo are still squaring off. Bravo tells Cap that he'd rather be trapped in nowhere than back in the United States, if that's what this means, because they both know that Jimmy's in trouble and the chances of them getting back through a portal depend on Jimmy staying alive. So Bravo says, I'd rather stay here in nowhere than return to the United States as it is right now. He views it as decadent and corrupt. Oh, yeah. And this is where he mentions the fact that it reminds him of the pre-Depression era United States with its corrupt politics. And he specifically brings up Tammany Hall, which was a corrupt institution in New York, the politics of New York City. And he accuses Cap of letting the same thing happen to the United States and not standing up for the people. In fact, he even tells Cap that FDR would be ashamed of what he's become.
Ouch, that hurts.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to hurt, right?
That's a zinger to Steve.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's probably Steve's favorite president. So Bravo pulls out this weapon and it shoots some sort of red energy beam at Cap, and it's not quite sure what happens here, but it looks like Steve has been depowered. His body has shrunk back down to like his pre-super serum days. And you would think like, well, he's beat now, right? But no, not Steve Rogers. He doesn't give up. In fact, he gets up and he continues to fight Bravo. He smacks him in the face with his shield, and then he gets him in a reverse headlock. So while this is going on, back in the real world,
Can I pause here, Bob?
yeah, you sure
All
can.
right. So back in the real world, I just want to, I want to, I don't know, say kudos to Steve McNiven, because if you look at that opening panel, the very first panel of this story, the background doesn't have a lot of detail, nothing extravagant about it.
Right.
But look at that floor, right? That
Yeah.
black and white tiled floor,
Yeah.
that looks like it took some time to put
It
together,
does. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And not only did he do that black and white tile floor there, but now we're back in the real world, and there's 3 panels on the next page that are also black and white tile. Like, he didn't phone this in.
Right.
He basically was like, he put time and effort
Yeah.
into to the details of this. Not only does he draw beautiful characters and expressions and great action sequences, but his attention to detail in the backgrounds is really noticeable as well.
Yeah. Except of course, Jay Lightstein was probably like, oh great, more tiled floors.
Yeah, right.
I gotta eat these, right? So anyway, back in the real world, we see Falcon and Nick pursuing the Hydra Queen, and Sharon has stayed back with Jimmy Jupiter, who now mind you, he's been shot in the chest. He's not doing well. He's already catatonic, and Sharon gets down on her knees and she takes Jimmy's hand and she's begging him with all her heart that if he is in there at all, to please help her by opening the portal up and allowing Cap to come back home. Because, this is the last thing that he can do to save Cap. And she knows that he has always been a fan of Cap. And I love there's a great little scene here where we see the catatonic face of Jimmy Jankowicz. And then in that one panel, there's a brief flicker of a smile that passes on his face. And just
Mm-hmm.
as that happens and he dies, the portal opens up and Cap and Bravo come tumbling through. I mean, they're fighting with each other, right? And as they're fighting, they both tumble through this portal, and we see that Jimmy Jupiter has expired.
Great
So
scene.
it's a great scene, right? It's powerful.
And I want to go back to the page right before he smiles because I agree with you 100%. That smile is it's heartwarming, right?
Yeah, it's the
But
last full measure. Yeah,
the page before that, there are three panels that are getting closer and closer and closer on Sharon Carter's face, and she's starting to cry, and then she's crying, and the way her hair is hung in front of her face, the look of the expression in her eyes, where she's like she doesn't want to lose Steve. She already lost Steve for a while, right? When he quote unquote died and
yeah,
was,
right.
and that was horrible. So she's experienced that. She doesn't want to lose him again. And here is this hardened shield agent that is battle tested, but her weakness is Steve Rogers.
Yeah,
And so that's when you see the emotion and the tears come through, beautifully drawn by Steve McNiven.
yeah, yeah. They really are. It's rendered quite well. You do see the emotion, and gosh, got me thinking. Like you're right. She just lost Steve for 3 years, right? Out of the magazine, and then in volume 7, she's going to lose him again.
Yeah, it's
Well, I don't
true.
want to give anything away, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Go
but no,
back and listen to our 10-part series of Castaway in Dimension Z. It's
right.
it's well worth it.
Well worth it. Yeah. So as I said, Cap and Bravo come tumbling through. Cap appears to be back into his normal physical shape as he comes through, which is funny because as they're tumbling through the portal, the top half, his torso, is returned to normality, but you see the bottom half of his body, which is still within the portal, and that is depowered. So as he's coming through the portal, he regains all his strength and physicality. And so Bravo's not giving up though. He thinks he's got him, dead for rights, and he's pointing his gun at him. But Falcon's here as well. So Falcon, I love this line. Not a chance, Chucklehead. And he kicks the gun out of Bravo's hand, and Cap comes up and gives him a left cross across the face. And then out of nowhere, Sharon comes and gives him a roundhouse kick to the jaw, knocking him to the ground. And
Barack.
correct, right, and throws her arms around Cap, and she's crying and she's so happy. And you're right, because she's got this line: "You really have to stop disappearing." It's the Cap thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got Nick's got Bravo in custody. He's got him in handcuffs, and they're dragging him out of there. And Bravo's complaining about the robber barons have taken over the country, and Captain America has failed. He's failed America, and they drag him off. And we see Cap outside, and he's talking with Nick and the Falcon and Sharon, and they don't quite know where the Hydra Queen is, but she's off someplace, and they're expecting to see her again. And in fact, we do see her again in the very next panel. She's standing on a stage with the Hydra flag behind her, and she is addressing the Hydra hordes. And as she goes backstage after her little speech, who's there but Baron Zemo? And here's a really interesting thing. She demands that he address her as Your Majesty. And you know what? He doesn't really push back on that at this point.
He's just pouring a glass of wine. Wow.
Yeah,
Barrett's got a little bit of a drinking problem here. Like every time you
yeah,
see him, he's like, "Hey, you want some booze?"
right, right. Yeah. So it's interesting. They're having a little conversation. They're drinking a glass of wine, and he asks her an interesting question. He wants to know if Bravo was right and if she believes that Captain America, Steve Rogers, that is his weak point, really his patriotism. So they've got plans yet for Steve Rogers. Next page, we see Cap. He's standing, Steve, I should say, he's standing on the roof of his apartment building. And as you said, he's looking out over the Manhattan River. There's the Brooklyn Bridge, and he's just thinking. He's lost deep in thought. And we see Sharon come up behind him, and she's got a couple beers in her hand, and she's offering one to him. She drops the bottles because next panel we see Steve is depowered again. He's got his baggy t-shirt on and his baggy jeans, and his body has returned to the pre-serum days. And we think, oh my gosh, what has happened? But on the next page, he wakes up from his own dream, lying next to Sharon, and he realizes, okay, it's just a bad dream. We can go back to sleep. And he thinks to himself, it's hard to believe. Sometimes I forget I'm a man out of time. And tonight I wonder what else I've forgotten. And that is the end of the story.
Is it? Because there's a question mark. The
The
end?
end? Indeed.
Oh, Bob, this is good stuff.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Yeah, I haven't, I don't think I've read this since the first time it came out 13 years ago.
Right.
So I'm glad we covered that today. Um, Anything stand out to you? I mean, I know we covered so much and we've kind of brought up a lot of points along the way, but does anything stand out to you about this story?
One of the things I didn't notice the first time I read through this, that it was, it is a bit of a political commentary on the state of the United States. That's not something I think I picked up on the first time reading through it in 2011. I mean, Bravo's being
Hmm.
pretty insistent that like the U.S. is decadent, the politicians are bought and paid for, the media is bought and paid for, and basically the American people are just being led along, and being told what they need to know, and but they're not being told the truth, right? And he's accusing Cap of letting this happen, of course. So I mean that comes through loud and clear a second time, third time around. And that's not something I picked up at first. The other thing is, like the art really drives home the relationships in this story, and I like it because a lot of times when you read an arc like this, maybe Nick has a little role to play or Sharon has a little role to play, um, but they're really integrated in the all five issues of this story. They all
Hmm.
have a really important role to play, and it starts with the funeral at Peggy's funeral. That the people that we see there are Steve and Nick and Sharon and Dum Dum, and these are folks that have had a relationship for a very long time. And this story is about exploring that relationship a little bit as well. And I like that. I like seeing that relationship plumbed a little bit deeper.
Yeah, it's a good point about being integrated together. Yeah, it's very obvious that in a story that it's Cap's book, but his co-stars have prominent roles,
Right?
and
Yeah.
I think that's something that Ed Brubaker realized when he was writing Volume 5. The other characters came, you know, you know, held the book. They led the book without a Steve Rogers, for almost 3 years, and so that's amazing writing right there, to be able to have a series about a character and that character's not in it, and yet it still does well. And so he understands the role of the characters in Steve's life. And I think yeah, they were all pivotal in here. I thought it was interesting to he did a nice job of creating a new character in Codename Bravo, and I guess to some extent the Queen Hydra, um, and then bringing back some other characters like the Ameridroid and like Jimmy Jupiter, and you
Yeah.
know reaching back into some of these forgotten characters to form this story that kind of hit a couple different time periods, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I enjoyed the story, love the art, and maybe at some point we'll come back and revisit Volume 6.
Yeah, I know I can't remember. I mean, obviously I read the rest of Volume 6. I can't remember if we get to learn more about Bravo's backstory. That's something I'd love to see explored a little bit more. Uh, it's reminiscent to me of. Do you remember what's that guy's name? Is it John Steele? Like it was the World War One kind of quasi super soldier, and he's been revisited time and time again. Most recently, I think in the was it the Steve Rogers Super Soldier miniseries? I don't know. Anyway,
Not ringing a bell, John Steele.
John
Yeah.
Steele. I think it was John Steele. I'll have to
Huh.
look it up. But in any case, a lot of these characters that have a backstory in the 1920s or early 1930s or even World War One. I'd like to see more of Bravo's backstory because, as I said, he's a little bit older than Nick. He's a little bit older than Steve Rogers and Peggy, and so he does have a backstory before he ended up in this story. I'd like to learn more about what that was.
Well, Bob, there's one way you can guarantee to do it, and that's in August. You could pick him in your draft.
There you go.
I think he should be your number one overall pick.
There you go. Might well be. I like to play the odds.
All right. Next episode, we're gonna do another Ed Brubaker story. We had so much fun with this one, and in this we didn't talk about it much in this story, but in issue 4, when he's in the nowhere land, Steve Rogers is an astronaut. And it's not the first time Ed Brubaker has written a retired Steve as an astronaut. In fact, in volume 5, number 10, which was a one-shot tie-in with the House of M storyline, we see an aged, retired Steve Rogers. And so it's a pretty cool one-shot story. You know what? We I think Bob had a great idea to bring this one in for next episode. So I'm on board. Let's do it, Bob.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, I think that's fun. It's not one that we talk a lot about. But it's an interesting story. It's another timeline of an alternate reality Steve. It's connected to the House of M, I think, as you said. So I think it'd be fun to do. What the hell?
What the hell? Steve Rogers as an astronaut. Let's
Yeah,
do it.
yeah. Why not?
I could go for a little tang.
Some of that dehydrated ice cream might be good.
What are you talking about?
You've never had that astronaut ice cream? You've never had astronaut ice cream, Rick?
No, Bob, I've never had astronaut ice cream.
Oh, I'm so sending you some astronaut ice cream.
Okay.
Yep.
You should totally do that.
Watch your mailbox.
Great. I'm going to get an envelope with powder in it.
You're going to get your astronaut ice cream.
I'm going to be like, should I open this? It's got powder on the.
Don't Google it. Don't Google it.
All right.
I want it to be a surprise.
All right.
And if hold on, if listeners, if you've heard of astronaut ice cream, please let us know in the comments.
Are these like those little pellets that you get in a cup?
Pellets. No, those are Dippin' Dots, Rick.
Oh, okay.
That's like a 21st century phenomenon.
I got it. Okay. Yeah. All right, we got to go. We got to get the heck out of here. So he's Bob Lucius. I'm Rick Verbanis. And you, if you don't mind, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. So if you're on YouTube right now, smash that thumbs up button. Please subscribe. Give us a review. We love that no matter what platform you're on. It always helps us out. So we appreciate that very much. And as always, you've been listening to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.